Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to the program. On tonight's headlines.
Democrat Joe Biden pulled ahead Friday in the crucial battleground state of Georgia, according to U.S. media, with votes still left to count.
Coronavirus cases hit new records in the United States as swaths of Italy return to lockdown and Greece prepares for new curbs, with the resurgent pandemic continuing its march through Europe.
And the Philippine peso finished Friday on a 4-year high against the greenback, while the main equities index posted a new 8-month high as investors took note of a possible Biden win in the United States. The race to the White House is down to the wire on who could become the next president. Could soon be decided by thousands of votes. Democrat Joe Biden pulled ahead on Friday in the crucial battleground state of Georgia, with votes still left to count. The former vice president ate away at President Trump's initial lead in the southern state and is now ahead by 917 votes, according to CNN and Fox News. Earlier, President Trump said he will win the election easily if only the legal votes were counted. By contrast, Joe Biden is appealing for calm, again telling Americans to have patience. Take a look.
We continue to feel, Senator and I, we continue to feel very good about where things stand. We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners. So I ask everyone to stay calm, all the people to stay calm. The process is working. The count is being completed. And we'll know very soon. In America, the vote is sacred. It's how people of this nation express their will. And it is the will of the voters, no one, not anything else, that chooses the President of the United States of America. So each ballot must be counted. And that's what we're going to see going through now. And that's how it should be. Democracy is sometimes messy. It sometimes requires a little patience as well. But that patience has been rewarded now for more than 240 years with a system of governance that's been the envy of the world.
So we'll win, and we think we will win the election very easily. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land. We'll see. But we think there'll be a lot of litigation because we can't have an election stolen like this. We can't be disgraced by having something like this happen. So it will be hopefully cleared up, maybe soon, I hope soon, but it'll probably go through a process, a legal process. And as you know, I've claimed certain states, and he's claiming states, and we can both claim the states, but ultimately I have a feeling judges are going to have to rule. But there's been a lot of shenanigans, and we can't stand for that in our country. As everyone now recognizes, media polling was election interference in the truest sense of that word by powerful special interests. These really phony polls, I have to call them phony polls, fake polls, were designed to keep our voters at home, create the illusion of momentum for Mr. Biden, and diminish Republicans' ability to raise funds. They were what's called suppression polls. Everyone knows that now. Democrats, we were winning in all the key locations by a lot, actually. And then our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away in secret. And they wouldn't allow, they want to find out how many the votes they need, and then they seem to be able to find them. They wait, and then they find them. And you see that on election night. We were ahead in vote in North Carolina by a lot, tremendous number of votes. And we're still ahead by a lot, but not as many. because they're finding ballots all of a sudden. Oh, we have some mail-in ballots. It's amazing how those mail-in ballots are so one-sided, too. I know that it's supposed to be to the advantage of the Democrats, but in all cases, they're so one-sided. We're on track to do okay in Arizona. Our goal is to defend the integrity of the election. We'll not allow the corruption to steal such an important election, or any election for that matter. And we can't allow anybody to silence our voters and manufacture about that. In Philadelphia, observers have been kept far away, very far away, so far that people are using binoculars to try and see, and there's been tremendous problems caused. They put paper on all of the windows so you can't see in, and the people that are banned are very unhappy and become somewhat violent.
While Mr. Trump was demanding that vote counting be halted in Georgia and Pennsylvania, where he is leading, his supporters and campaign were insisting that it continue in Arizona and Nevada, where he is trailing. President Trump prematurely declared victory Wednesday and threatened to seek Supreme Court intervention to stop vote counting, but it has continued nonetheless. Fox News and AP News Agency projected Biden as the winner in Arizona on Tuesday night, but other outlets have yet to do so, and vote counting continues in the state where Biden has a fairly healthy vote lead. With 86% of the vote counted, Biden had a razor-thin 8,000 vote lead in Nevada, which has 6 electoral votes.
Former acting U.S. Director of National Intelligence Richard Grenell, speaking on behalf of the Trump campaign, alleges without evidence that local election officials in Las Vegas, Nevada, continue to count illegal votes. Watch this.
Look, the reality is that transparency is not political.
Sir, your name?
Ballots are not automatically legal votes until they're checked. We've asked Clark County for answers. They have no answers. They continue to count illegal votes. That is unacceptable.
We are anticipating to have the bulk of our mail ballots that have been received into the system by Saturday or Sunday. The last day that we can tabulate and send ballots into the system is November 12th. My response is that we are not aware of any improper ballots that are being processed.
They not presented any evidence to reporters, but they presented any evidence to you?
Not directly that I'm aware of.
I wanted to make sure that the votes were being counted properly and that their dead people weren't voting. I've had many friends who told me that they got votes for their dogs or cats, for dead people in their, where they're living in their apartments.
But we just want to verify that all the votes that are counted are qualified votes. That these are votes not coming from the people who died with COVID, people who are out of state, people who don't have the ability to vote because they don't have the papers. We just want to make sure that the votes that are counted are U.S. citizens.
Our votes are being suppressed. We cannot count the votes properly. What's happening is they have moved the barrier up to 6 feet, but they took away the ballot machines that were in the front row and moved them to the back of the building. We are not going to stand for this. We're not going anywhere. They are defying a court order by a judge, and this is not the last of this.
The sheriff of your county will not come down and enforce a court order. What is going on in this city? What are you hiding? Open up the doors, let us in, let us 6 feet away so that we can have a free and fair election. Here, this makes it look like a kangaroo court. We deserve better, and we're not leaving until we witness every single vote that transpires in here.
Joe Biden is holding a slim lead over Donald Trump in Nevada, which counts for 6 electoral college votes. As of Thursday Eastern Time, around 75 or 84% of the vote has been counted. The top elections official said that more results will be released that include mail-in ballots received on Tuesday and Wednesday. No Republican presidential candidate has carried Nevada since 2004, but the state has remained a battleground. Mr. Trump fell just shy of winning Nevada 4 years ago, and this year he campaigned hard in the state, hoping for a win. Meanwhile, Trump's team fanned out across the battleground states, challenging the results in court, and his supporters converged outside election offices in several cities. Outside an election office in Arizona's capital, Phoenix, far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones roused a heavily armed crowd, shouting on a megaphone about Trump's supposed enemies, saying they will be destroyed because America is rising. In Las Vegas, Trump backers wearing red Make America Great Again hats demanded to see ballots being processed.
The outcome of the U.S. presidential election remained in the balance late Thursday as a handful of battleground states complete their vote counts. Democrat Joe Biden has racked up at least 253 of the 270 electoral votes that he needs, according to U.S. network projections. And 264 if Arizona is included, which Fox News and the Associated Press have called in his favor. Now, here's the state of play in the states at play. In Georgia, it's now showing a Biden lead in Georgia of about 1,000 votes. Local officials said on Thursday that around 15,000 votes were left to count, but there has been no update since. And in Pennsylvania, Trump is ahead, but Biden is narrowing the gap. What was once a lead of more than 500,000 is now down to just over 18,000. And officials said they hope to count the overwhelming majority of the outstanding votes by the end of Thursday, Friday time here. Now, Biden still has a lead of 47,000, but Mr. Trump has been gaining steadily throughout the day. In Nevada, the former Vice President Joe Biden leads by nearly 12,000 votes, a lead he extended slightly on Thursday with the latest batch of results. Now, if Biden leads in Arizona, holds, and he wins Nevada or Georgia, he would pass the threshold of 270 electoral votes.
Progressive politics standard-bearer New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said on Thursday she has faith in the United States democracy and said that means letting every vote be counted as Americans await vote counting results. Watch this.
Obviously, as votes are still being counted, I think the whole world waits for the final outcome in the United States. But of course, we continue to have faith in those institutions, as I'm sure they do. You know, my job in this role as Prime Minister is to work with whomever another country decides should be their leader, in the same way that New Zealand expects every other country to work with whomever they elect as Prime Minister. It's my job to speak on behalf of New Zealanders, and I think our strong view is that other democracies should be left to run their course. But that means if you let me finish my question, that means letting every vote be counted and letting people have their say and for a democracy to be heard. That's obviously still underway in the United States, so I won't give comment until that democracy has been seen through and people get the results.
The 40-year-old won her own bid for re-election last month in the New Zealand election. On Thursday, Ardern gave her first major post-election address, spelling out her immediate governing priorities to Business New Zealand.
In Hong Kong, Chief Executive Carrie Lam said that whoever wins the U.S. presidential election must put a stop to the country's unreasonable and unjustified interference in Hong Kong affairs. Take a look.
They have recently imposed sanctions on government officials, including myself. So I hope that they will come back to normalcy and accept that the relationship has to be built on mutual respect and cooperation.
Last October 15, the U.S. State Department warned international financial institutions doing business with individuals deemed responsible for China's crackdown in Hong Kong that they could soon face tough sanctions. In a report to Congress, the State Department named 10 people, including Hong Kong's Chief Executive Carrie Lam, all of whom have already been sanctioned, and said within 60 days it would identify financial institutions that conduct significant transactions with them. It was a response to China's actions in Hong Kong, including enactment of a new national security law this year that Washington has called an unacceptable breach of China's one country, two systems commitments toward the former British colony.
In every election season in the United States, residents in the territories of Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico address numerous recurring topics ranging from their national identity to being unable to vote for president. Irish Dale Radam from our EBC Micronesia Bureau has more.
I'm one who believes that the status quo is okay as far as our relationship with the United States and being a territory.
President is the symbol of democracy and a free nation. And people do not realize Guam is a part of that. So it only depicts the situation we're in. We're not able to vote for him. We might as well not be a part of him, right?
Under current law, American citizens who claim residency in one of 5 U.S. territories are not entitled to participate in the presidential elections. One of those territories in the West Pacific is the island of Guam. Given the recent 2020 elections and ongoing uncertainties, Americans in Guam like Lawrence Payne share his frustration for not being able to take part in the said election process.
Well, it's a conflict of many layers. One, taxation without representation is the loudest cry. So we pay taxes on Guam, yet we do not have a voice of empowerment that dictates the level of tax or the amount of tax. So therefore, that's one of the biggest hurts, that we pay tax without proper representation.
Meanwhile, in American Samoa, the question of whether to remain as a territory or as an independent country comes and goes. Many of the residents here prefer things the way they are, while others focus more on immediate issues.
I just don't think independence is in the future for us. I don't think we have the resources that it takes to be independent, which is, with me, fine. I think the money that we get from the United States, as far as supplying, much of our economy, is deserving. I hear a lot of talk sometimes about American Samoa being a welfare state, and for me, that's farthest from the truth. I think it's just a matter of the relationship that the United States chose with us, and it makes them responsible. Probably make things work towards a better future. I think immigration would be at the top of the list. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can address, but I think immigration is a big problem, particularly when it comes to our economy. And when I say that, I mean that there's a lot of money that's leaving our economy, leaving the island, because of the people we have here as far as immigration. I know it's a necessity, but if you look at the groups here, like for example the Filipino community, if you ask them how much of their paycheck stays here and how much of their paycheck leaves the island, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a surprising number that's probably not going to benefit the people of American Samoa. And that goes for the Chinese, who's probably the worst offenders. I wouldn't be surprised if over 90% of their money leaves off island and isn't in the economy here locally. And then you have, our own brothers and sisters from the independent state of Samoa, where 80% of them, make up the factory workers at the canneries, and most of their money gets sent back. So I think immigration needs to be looked at. I'm not saying to stop immigration. I'm just saying that we need some kind of control over immigration to try and stop the hemorrhaging of the money, that's leaving the islands and stuff.
Better management of the grants that we get for the advancement of our people. It's one thing to get money from the U.S., it's another to make sure that that money is being used properly for the advancement of our people. Another thing, a lot of that money needs to be more put in our education. We're losing our youth. We need more of our youth to go into colleges, to get more educated, to get more knowledge, so they can come back and run this country better.
At present, more than 3.5 million U.S. citizens reside in America's territories in the Caribbean or the Pacific. If ranked among the 50 U.S. states based on population, overseas Americans would be larger than 22 other states in the Union. Reporting from the island of Guam, I'm Irish Silverdam, EBC News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Irish. More than 120,000 coronavirus cases were reported in the U.S. in the past 24 hours, smashing a daily record set the day before, according to a tally by Johns Hopkins University. The country reported 123,085 new infections between 8:30 p.m. Wednesday and 8:30 p.m. Thursday, and 1,226 more deaths, the tally by the Baltimore-based school showed. On Wednesday, 99,660 new cases of the virus were reported. Thursday's tally shatters that record by 23,425 cases. While deaths remain lower than their worst levels in the spring, Thursday was also the third day in a row that fatalities were above 1,000. The last time people were dying at that rate of COVID-19 in the U.S. was early September. More than 9.6 million people have been infected, and more than 234,000 have died in the U.S. so far during the pandemic, by far the highest tolls in absolute terms globally.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said the trajectory of COVID-19 remains key to the U.S. recovery, and until it is eradicated, more emergency spending will be essential to support the economy. Powell steered away from any discussion of politics, saying the economy, not the election, was the focus of the two-day meeting of the FED's policy-setting Federal Open Market Committee. He said that the recent spike in COVID-19 cases is particularly concerning for the U.S. economy. Watch this.
And I think I just would say that I think we'll have a stronger recovery if we can just get at least some more fiscal support when it's appropriate, when it's appropriate and the size Congress thinks it's appropriate. I do think that will likely, and by the way, you see, a lot of discussion on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the hill, that suggests generally that there will be something. The economic recovery has exceeded certainly the downside cases that we were very concerned about, and even exceeded the baseline expectations. Now, that's so far. We are a long way from our goals, and we're sort of halfway there on the labor market recovery at best, and there are parts of the economy where it's going to be hard until there's a vaccine. We've gotten through the first 5-6 months of the expansion better than expected. But we do see in Europe, look what's happening in Europe, look what's happening here, another spike in cases as the cold weather arrives and people are inside more. So I think we have to be humble about where we are relative to this disease. It hasn't gone away. Clearly, therapeutics are advancing, research on vaccines are advancing, death rates are way down, hospitalization rates are lower now, but so we're learning, but I mean, we're very far from saying that we think we've got this and eliminated the tail risks. But I think clearly the tail risks have diminished since at least our perception of them has diminished since earlier in the year.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization in Europe said it was seeing an explosion of coronavirus cases in the region and warned of a tough time ahead as mortality rates rose. WHO's regional director for Europe, Hans Klug, who was wearing a mask even as he was interviewed over a webcam meeting, also said the mortality rate could be seen rising little by little.
Do see an explosion. And in that sense, it takes only a couple of days to have in our European region an increase, for example, with 1 million cases. And we see little by little the mortality increasing as well. Several countries did relax public health measures over the summer. Mask wearing was not systematic, was not general. Several countries did not put a strict control on social gatherings. So then you saw that the virus was aggressively, in fact, multiplying. Now not. What we advocate is what we call proportionate, targeted measures to scale them up. Although, you're right, the last weeks we also see it also has its limits and people get a bit confused. They think maybe there's a misperception of favoritism to one sector and not to the other sector. If you wear a mask properly, it does not hurt. It's low tech. It's something we can do. So let's do it. Then there is good news. For example, only with systematic and generalized mask wearing plus strict control on social gatherings, we can save 261,000 lives by the end of February in our European region. This is low tech.
WHO Europe spans 53 countries, including Russia and countries in Central Asia, and on Thursday reported a total of over 12 million cases in the region, with nearly 2 million in the last 7 days.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson is appealing for unity as England enters its new lockdown. Joining us live is Erica Celestino. Erica, what's going on there?
Thank you. And yes, that is correct. Prime Minister Boris Johnson called for a united effort to tackle spiking coronavirus infection rates as 56 million people in England went into a second lockdown, but with the public weary of restrictions and fearing for their livelihoods. Let's listen in.
Sadly, 492 deaths were reported yesterday, and the weekly average number of deaths each day is now 295, up from 53 a month earlier. So that's why new restrictions are in place in each part of the UK. And in England, from today, we're once again asking you to stay at home. I know how tough this is. For staff in the NHS and care homes who are facing a tough winter on the front line, for families who can't meet in the way that they would want to, for businesses forced to shut just as you're getting back on your feet. I know that many of you are anxious, weary, and quite frankly fed up with the very mention of this virus. But these are difficult times. And while it pains me to have to ask once again for so many to give up so much, I know that together we can get through this. So please, for the next 4 weeks, stay at home, protect the NHS, and save lives.
To last for 4 weeks, renewed stay-at-home restrictions and business closures came into force on Thursday and had turned normally bustling cities into ghost towns. Also, CJ, the Bank of England, unveiled an extra £150 billion, equivalent to $195 billion in economic support, on top of new Treasury measures to subsidize the wages of furloughed workers until March 2021. Johnson also added that the package showed his government will continue to support people affected by these new restrictions. The government also announced passengers arriving in Britain from Germany and Sweden must self-isolate for 14 days from Saturday 4 a.m., the latest countries removed from its coronavirus travel list. Meanwhile, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, he started self-isolating after coming into contact with someone who tested positive for COVID-19, a spokesman said, according to AFP, adding also that he will continue to work remotely during this time. So, CJ, Prime Minister Boris Johnson abandoned a recently introduced system of regional curbs and announced the shutdown after dire warnings that hospitals could soon be overwhelmed with COVID-19 cases. According to AFP, Simon Stevens, the head of the state-run National Health Service in England, urged compliance and warned this second wave of COVID-19 is real and it is serious. He also added today's infection is the intensive care order booked for a fortnight's time, noting the total number of patients admitted to hospital had shot up from below 500 in early September to more than 11,000. To avoid extending the lockdown, Johnson is pinning his hopes on an ambitious new program of COVID testing to detect and isolate infected people, starting with a citywide trial launching in Liverpool on Friday. In this case or scenario, around 2,000 military personnel are being mobilized to help in the pilot, which will identify positive cases even in people without symptoms. The government had spent £12 billion on testing programs, but researchers say most members of the public are failing to isolate or report their contacts fully. CJ, here in Britain, it has been recorded that nearly 48,000 people had died due to the coronavirus from more than 1 million positive cases. 492 deaths were recorded on Wednesday, the highest since May. New restrictions bring England into line with other parts of the UK, which have their own devolved governments, and with nations in Europe, including France. They include a return to working from home where possible, and the closure of all non-essential shops and services. Schools will remain open, and there are exemptions that include outdoor exercise and visits to the doctor or pharmacy. Back to you, CJ.
Yes, Erica, I just want to ask a question because the World Health Organization said that one of the most effective ways to stop the spread of the virus is by wearing masks. And we're looking at the video that you gave us, and we saw a lot of people were not wearing masks. May I ask, how is the compliance when it comes to mask wearing there in Britain?
So here we are told to wear masks, and there will be fines if you don't wear masks in, let's say, indoor places. But when it comes to outside or outdoor places, you can walk in
wear the mask.
Not really wearing the mask. And there are also like exemptions for people that have difficulties in breathing as well. So they have like a reason not to wear it. And sometimes, from what I've seen around, they wear a pin showing that
they're excused to wear the masks.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Erica, for those updates. Please do stay safe, and we're looking forward to hearing more of the stories from you.
Thank you, CJ, reporting live from London, United Kingdom. I am Erica Celestino. We live in interesting times.
In a related news, British police arrested a number of protesters during the annual Million Mask March at Trafalgar Square in central London, as it takes place on the day national lockdown rules come into force. Take a look.
It's like shutting everything down for a flu, which has already disappeared, in probably April. It's just absolutely ridiculous. PCR is a fraud. They've not isolated the virus once. It's an absolute joke. Let's shut the whole world down for a flu.
Anymore. The truth is now illegal. I put on my YouTube the COVID cure, which is interferons, and it's in chickens anyway. I put that on, and the cure for cancer, which is alkaline in the body, it cures everything. But that was taken off against the narrative. You've got to scare people, you've got to be scared, you've got to stay in your house, and it's all for the wrong reasons, dude. There is no COVID. COVID is a lie.
I think it's a load of rubbish. Sick of this lockdown, sick of the control of the government, and just trying to stand up and make a difference. I wouldn't want to go in 20 years' time. People go, what did you do about it? Well, I sat at home and moaned, but done nothing.
I reckon they want a one world government, one world army, new world order. That's what it is. That is what it is. The Illuminati want to run the world. Simple. That's what I'm saying. That's what I think.
I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not believing in COVID. I'm not following this line no longer.
3 times a week, 2 nurses and a volunteer meet homeless people in a city close to Lille in north of France. They spend time talking with them, offering food and, if needed, COVID testing.
Ça va pas faire plus. Non, c'est grand pour nous, ouais. C'est un peu comme ce truc-là.
Une écharpe.
Après, pull, ouais,
J'ai recherché à 9h30, on va voir l'assistante sociale pour faire ton dossier de CMU. Est-ce que tu as pu faire ton papier d'impôt? T'as pas pu?
Ben, je l'ai imprimé, mais je sais pas le remplir.
T'as eu de la fièvre, tu sais pas?
Je l'ai fiévreuse à un moment.
Le but premier, l'existence même de l'équipement 1000 rameaux, c'est de ramener la population qui est dans une grande situation de précarité vers le soin. Parce que justement, c'est des personnes, le soin, la santé, ça va pas être leur priorité. Eux, ça va être la survie, ça va être se mettre à l'abri, ça va être trouver à manger, de quoi boire, se protéger des différents dangers qui peuvent exister à vivre dehors. Et justement, la santé, c'est vraiment secondaire. Nous, notre travail, c'est justement de les ramener vers le soin.
La mairie, pour avoir une autorisation, alors qu'on a une personne qui travaille à la mairie. Mais maintenant, avec le Covid, c'est encore plus pire, parce que le CCS, c'est encore plus dur. Donc du coup, on est un peu coincé entre les démarches et ici.
Avec, à cause du Covid, il faut le faire par Internet.
D'accord, ok.
And Eagle News, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
This portion is brought to you by RJK Services Manpower Agency Corporation.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
In other news, Kyrgyzstan tore down the gates of its main government building on Friday in a move the authorities said symbolized the removal of barriers between citizens and government following political turmoil. Surenbey Jinbekov last month became the 3rd president in Kyrgyzstan to resign amid unrest since the country gained independence 29 years ago as the Soviet Union collapsed. His departure came after allegations of vote rigging in an October parliamentary election sparked mass protests that persisted even after the vote results were cancelled. The initiative to tear down the black-painted metal gates surrounding the building that houses parliament and the presidential administration came from new Prime Minister and Acting President Sadir Japarov, Parliamentary Speaker Talant Mamitov, he told this to journalists. Protesters captured a government building known as the White House in the early hours of October 6th, a day after the results of the election were announced. They broke through the gates, mirroring the actions of protesters during political upheavals that unseated the country's first and second presidents in 2005 and 2010.
Kosovo President Hashim Thaçi announces his resignation after his war crimes indictment was confirmed by a special tribunal in The Hague on charges relating to the conflict against Serbian forces in the late 1990s. Watch this.
Nuk do të lejoj në asnjë rrethon që para gjyqit të dalë presidenti i Republikës së Kosovës. Prandaj, për të mbrojtur integritetin e presidencës së Republikës së Kosovës, integritetin e shtetit e Kosovës, integritetin dhe dinjitetin e qytetarit të Kosovës, popullit e Kosovës, duke respektuar edhe partneritetin me bashkinë ndërkombëtare, unë sot jap dorëheqjen nga pozita e presidentit të Republikës së Kosovës.
German police said they are raiding apartments and offices over possible links to the Austrian Islamic State sympathizer who went on a deadly gun rampage in central Vienna. The sites that were searched in the northeast of the country belong to 4 people who are not believed to be involved in the attack, according to the Federal Criminal Agency, BKA. Now, the gunman, identified as 20-year-old dual Austrian Macedonian national Najdim Feyslai, was killed by police after going on a shooting spree in Vienna on Monday evening that left 4 people dead. Austrian police detained 14 people in the wake of the shooting, the first major attack in the country for decades, and the first blamed on a jihadist. Germany's Der Spiegel magazine had reported earlier this week that the Vienna attacker had made contact with German Islamists during an attempt to travel to Syria to join the Islamic State group. The investigation has also led to Switzerland, where prosecutors have confirmed that 2 Swiss men aged 18 and 24 who were arrested on Wednesday had already been the targets of criminal cases over terrorism offenses.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said Friday that military operations launched in the northern region of Tigray had limited objectives as calls rise for the country to step back from what could be a devastating war. A long-running feud erupted into armed conflict this week between Addis Ababa and Tigray, whose leaders effectively ruled the country for 3 decades until Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power. Abiy, the winner of last year's Nobel Peace Prize, announced Wednesday he had ordered military operations in Tigray in response to an attack on a military camp by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or the TPLF. The TPLF denies the attack occurred and accuses Abiy of concocting the story to justify deploying the military against it. UN Chief Antonio Guterres said or called for the immediate de-escalation of the tensions amid reports of heavy shelling and troop movements, while observers warned that an all-out war between the 2 powerful armies could be long and bloody.
And Panamanian rescue forces are evacuating victims from the flooded areas after Tropical Storm Eta brought heavy rain that caused deadly flooding in the region. Take a look.
Sí, nuestra casa se colapsó y ahorita en este momento nosotros no tenemos ni a dónde llegar y a dónde nosotros no tenemos ahorita mismo, y nosotros no somos de aquí, veníamos a buscar vida para poder sobrevivir, pero en este momento nos pasó en esta cosa y ahora nos preocupa y ahora no sé dónde vamos, vivimos con los niños.
Eagle News will be right back. Please don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by Canreeve Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
The Philippine peso finished Friday on a 4-year high against the greenback, while the main equities index posted a new 8-month high as investors took note of a possible Biden win in the U.S. The local currency finished the week at 48.22, better than its 48.31 close on Thursday. This is the highest for the peso since it closed at 48.19 on October 24, 2016. Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation Chief Economist Michael Ricafort said it opened the day at 48.27 and traded between 48.3 and 48.22 for an average of 48.272. RCBC Chief Economist Michael Ricafort attributed the peso's performance to the continued gains in the local and U.S. global financial markets as Joe Biden moves closer to victory as the next U.S. president that led to hefty gains in the local and U.S. global stock markets that resulted in a weaker U.S. dollar versus major global currencies to among 2-month lows. He said a victory by Joe Biden is expected to be good for the Philippines and the rest of Asia with less U.S.-China trade war.
Meanwhile, Malaysia government unveiled its national budget for the year 2021 in the country's parliament on Friday as the country seeks to revive an economy that has been badly hit by the pandemic. Finance Minister Tengku Zafrul told Parliament, never in modern human history has a pandemic had such a huge impact, and this is an unprecedented crisis, unquote. Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin said the 2021 budget would continue to focus on protecting the livelihood and welfare of the people, revitalizing and supporting the economy. Malaysia's trade-reliant economy suffered its first contraction in over a decade in the second quarter as the coronavirus outbreak hit business activity and exports, causing GDP to drop 17.1%.
Tokyo's key Nikkei index closed up Friday, hitting its highest level since 1991, despite continued uncertainty over the outcome of the U.S. presidential election. The benchmark Nikkei 225 index gained 0.91% or 219.95 points to end at 24,325.23, the highest level since November 1991. Over the week, the index rallied 5.9%. The broader Topics Index closed up 0.52% or 8.55 points at 1,658.49. Over the week, the index climbed 5%. Japanese indices started in negative territory, adjusting recent gains and reacting to a stronger yen against the dollar. But investors later resumed bargain hunting purchases on the backdrop of easing uncertainties over the U.S. presidential election, and that is according to the Okasan Online Securities in a commentary.
In other business news, Toyota on Friday almost doubled its full-year forecast, saying sales and production were recovering quickly from the coronavirus pandemic, which has shredded the global auto market this year. Japan's top car maker now projects net profit of 1.42 trillion yen or $137 billion for the fiscal year to March 2021, up from an earlier estimate of 730 billion yen. It said full-year sales are now expected to hit 26 trillion yen, against against a previous estimate of 24 trillion yen. Results for the first half appeared sluggish compared with the previous year, with net profit down 45.3% at 629.4 billion yen. But the signs of recovery were clear in the second quarter, with bottom line profit at 470.5 billion yen against 158.8 billion yen in the previous quarter when the pandemic was hitting hard.
And finally, in our news, in the town of Rabbit Hash, the new mayor-elect is officially Wilbur, the French Bulldog. Wilbur, a French Bulldog, won the race for mayor Tuesday night with 13,143 votes, unseating incumbent Bryneth Paltrow. Second and third place finishers Jack Rabbit, the Beagle, and Poppy, the Golden Retriever, respectively, will both be Rabbit Hash ambassadors. Lady Stone will continue to be a Rabbit Hash ambassador as well. I trust dogs.
It has gone to the dogs.
Yeah.
The race has gone to the dogs.
How cute. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast.